Sports, 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 sports.
Hey there, sports fans. Welcome to Sportsball, part of the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. We talk about sports-related topics, but we focus on you, the fan, and what you like, whether it's a sport, team, athlete, sports-related news, or sports-related event. This week, a little bit later than usual, we are talking about the Formula One 2025 end of the year, second half of the year, more like the second, like maybe it's closer to 2/3 because the last time that Adam and I, Adam, hello to you, our resident Formula One expert, a co-host of numerous shows on our network, and just all around friend. Adam, how's it going?
It's going pretty well, pretty well. A nice hot and humid summer down here. I'm not sure what you're feeling in the northern part of the planet, but
It's
stinking hot.
It's below 0 Celsius here. It's great. It's great.
Right.
Love it. Love it.
We're hitting like high 90s Fahrenheit, high 90s, and about anywhere between 80 and 95 humidity as well. It's just it's been rotten.
Lovely. It sounds. So Adam and I last recorded, I believe there were a couple races to go before the mid-season, or not mid-season break, but like the little break that Formula One goes on, around the middle of the year. So lots to catch up.
After the Belgian Grand Prix, I think, is when we recorded.
So why don't we talk about post Belgian Grand Prix and then kind of go from there. So walk me through, as cliche and as kind of lame as it sounds, walk me through the rest of the season. What happened? And let's just go with what happened, and then we'll kind of get some thoughts kind of around the way about how you felt about everything that happened, surprises, all of that stuff. So let's just kind of do a quick recap of what happened the rest of the year.
Yeah, okay. So since Belgium, it looked as though Oscar Piastri had a bit of a firm grip on the championship. And two races after that, he had a very good grip on the championship, but he had a bit of a bad patch for about 5 or 6 races where he didn't even get on the podium. These were really attributed to, internally from the McLaren team and himself, attributed to circuits that are generally low grip, and Oscar doesn't handle the low grip circuits as well as McLaren. And also that last half of the season, Max Verstappen won 6 of those last 8 or 9 races, purely because Red Bull found something like a really minor upgrade on their floor, I believe, and that helped stabilize the car, and Max was able to drive it a bit more. But also, McLaren fumbled the ball a few times for Max to be able to win some of those races as well. They're definitely in McLaren's grasp that they should have won, but they didn't for various reasons, and then it made the actual title chase much closer than it needed to be or should have been, to be perfectly honest. I mean, at the end of the day, McLaren had the dominant car. From the constructors' perspective, they won the constructors' championship by almost 400 points. But Max Verstappen still won the most races out of any driver this year, which was really bizarre. If at the halfway point of this season, Max had 2 wins to, I think, Oscar's 7. And Norris's 5 or 6, and he was nowhere. He was 104 points behind Oscar at a certain point and come home and actually finished in front of Oscar, and it was only 2 points off the actual championship. So it was as an Australian, it was a really stressful time because obviously I'm rooting for Oscar to win, and the first Australian world champion it would have been in 45 years. So yeah, my feelings on it are bittersweet. Like, I think in hindsight, obviously, if you follow Formula One, you listen to this, Lando Norris won the championship. Ultimately, he probably deserved it in the end because he did have a great last half of the season. Like, his races in Mexico and Brazil, for example, were just exemplary. In Mexico especially, it was probably his best race weekend of his career, probably, just how dominant he was. Oscar didn't get his groove back until the last 2 races. Qatar, he should have won. The team again, he got screwed over on strategy. Yeah, Oscar had when it come down to line ball decisions, Oscar generally fell on the wrong side of the fence of those line ball moments in the season where Lando seemed to fall on the right side of the fence when it was like if there was 10 line ball decisions through the year, Lando got the advantage in probably 8 of those. And that's kind of how the season wound up. And yeah, I mean, I have thoughts. I do have thoughts. I still do think.
Do you just want to go ahead and share your thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I do. And obviously, just to anyone listening, I haven't come into this planned. I just, this is all just from the way I felt throughout the season. I should do a Formula One, like a race to race thing, I think, but that's a very saturated market now. But yeah, I think Norris is a bit of a weak world champion. And it's weird to say that he still beat Piastri, but Piastri is still only 82 races into his career. He's still 3.5 seasons or whatnot behind Norris in experience. And to run in that close and to do as good as he did, like Oscar's absolutely in the frame to be one of the greatest drivers of all time. Max probably will go down as the greatest driver of all time. He's certainly one of them. And it took him 5 years to win his first championship. So, yeah, as I said, as an Australian, it's very bittersweet. It was a great season, as I predicted at the very start of our pre-season episode. I said it's going to be a great season, and it really was. We did only have 4 different winners in the year, but those wins were kind of spread out quite evenly. George Russell in Mercedes won 2. But between Norris and Piastri, it was a great battle all the time because it was up and down. There were ifs and buts. The papaya rules caused a lot of controversy, a lot of politics, a lot of on social media. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of arguments, a lot of fights, a lot of toxicity, as is really unusual on social media. You don't see that very often, but it was happening. It was happening in Formula One for some reason this year. Yeah, look, there's obviously some nationality behind it and some biases, but
yeah, for sure.
Overall, it's going to go down as a very well-remembered season. And the last season for this brand of rules, I know the drivers are very happy to see the end of these cars as well. They didn't enjoy driving them. So we'll get to next year later. But look, overall, a really great season, even though the result didn't land the way I wanted it to land.
Does this happen very often where a team makes like a mid-season adjustment like this and then they just kind of not like run the table, but like see a drastic improvement, or not even like a drastic improvement, but you see the results kind of swing in that team's favor?
How Red Bull did it?
Yeah.
Well, it's not that common, but the most recent before this year, the most recent example was actually McLaren in 2023. Mm-hmm. They started the year, they were probably the second slowest, the 9th fastest team out of 10. And then all of a sudden through that year, in the middle of the year, they did some massive upgrades and they were starting to get podiums. And then 2024, they started getting wins. And then, so they gained whatever they did to their car, they obviously hired the right people. So, I mean, it's not all that common to see such a dramatic shift in momentum, but it's I think Red Bull did it. Red Bull continued to develop their 2025 car where McLaren haven't developed the 25 car. I think they stopped really early on, like probably by Canada, even before that in Spain. So really the first third of the season, they just went, we're dominant. We've got a great car. We don't need to do it. We've got new regulations in 2026. They just devoted all of their wind tunnel time and design time to next year's car. So I think that's why it allowed some other teams to catch up as well. Like at certain circuits, Mercedes were better than McLaren. McLaren were back in the mix. Azerbaijan in Baku was a really good example of that, where even the Williams was faster than McLaren because they just developed a little bit more, developed certain aspects of the car. A lot of it's track specific and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, typically teams will bring upgrades to every race of the year or at least every couple of races, just depending, again, it's track specific sometimes. So you normally see it does get to, normally you'll see a team develop between maybe 2 to 7/10 of a second quicker from race 1 to race 24 by the end of the year, they might be. But again, that goes incrementally. So all teams gain that advantage at different points of the season. And it just, I don't know, it doesn't normally see such a bigger shift where someone finds this magic bullet and it just makes them 4/10 faster than everyone all of a sudden. It's not really the way, especially at the end of a formula cycle, as 2025 was. 2026 and 27, we might see something different in that because someone's going to come out of the gate and just be dominant, at least 1 or 2 teams. There's already rumors about next year, which we'll get to later, about engines. So it looks like one or two teams might be on top of a loophole of the engine, uh, and other teams might lag behind. But those teams will have to redevelop their engine to fill that loophole, because I don't know that the FIA will ban it. So it's yeah, I can explain it a bit later, but we'll cover off in this season a bit more first.
Any highlights in terms of, you know, your favorite races, favorite moments from the second half of the year, and then we'll get to kind of like disappointments, surprises, kind of, you know, go from there. But any big highlights from the second half of the year that you want to point out?
Nothing sticks in my mind as in great races. I mean, the racing in general has been really good, but again, because of this development cycle, the cars were finding it very much harder to overtake each other again by the end of it, because they'd figured out the aerodynamic side of it, and other cars just weren't able to stay close and overtake. So the racing wasn't primo. I think honestly, the race in Austin was probably a really big highlight. That was a really great race that was won by Max. It was a really interesting weekend, being a sprint weekend as well. There was a bit of toing and froing, speed difference. Like McLaren was probably quicker, but again, Max got himself in front because of qualifying, and he is just incredibly quick. But nothing is standing out as in a massive highlight. I mean, there's always races that I enjoy watching. Singapore, I love watching. I love watching those tight, twisty street circuits. And that Singapore was a great race. We did see Carlos Sainz get a podium there. Some really uplifting results with some drivers. I'm just looking through my spreadsheet now to see what stands out. Brazil again was another pretty decent weekend to watch it was a bit of a mixed weather weekend. Had a sprint race as well. Kimi Antonelli did very well. Had a second place finish. Nothing much, honestly, other than that.
Well, let's get to kind of some of your, you know, end of the year, you know, biggest surprises, biggest disappointments. You know, if you could crown an overall, like, I don't want to say like winners and losers or anything like that, because, you know, as long as everyone's competing hard, right? Isn't that far more valuable to you as opposed to, you know, saying like who completely tanked the season? But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about, you know, some big surprises this year and some, you know, some disappointments.
Some of the answers might be the same for those. So my biggest surprise was Oscar Piastri, because the fact that he came out, he won 7 of the first 14 races, and he was just looked like he was going to cruise to a championship in his third year. He was driving beautifully, but then he's also my biggest disappointment, because he did have it in the bag. And well, look, it's never in the bag, but he should have cruised to victory, to World Championship pretty comfortably, considering the form he was on. There's a lot of conspiracy that McLaren was sabotaging him. I just do not buy into that. I think that's complete fallacy. There's no way on the planet they did that. And I think it was proven plenty of times. But yeah, again, he's my highlight and also my disappointment, because as an Australian, he didn't win the championship. But also a highlight because of the potential that this kid has, the way he's matching the best of the best who have so much more experience than him. I think Oscar is clearly a superstar, and I think could become a megastar. He could be a multiple world champion for sure if he's in the right car at the right time. Lowlights, Alpine. I think we discussed this. Alpine finished last in the championship, and I think a lot of that is to do with their management, the way they run the team. Their unceremonious dumping of Jack Doohan for Franco Colapinto, who did a worse job than Doohan was doing. Didn't improve throughout the season. He's there because of his looks, and he's got money behind him in Argentina. Doohan doesn't have that money. Australia just doesn't give money to sports like that, where other nations do. That's the only reason Colapinto got re-signed for next year. It really bugs me, because he's just not good. He's not good at all. The Argentinian is going to hunt me down, but that's fine. I am entitled to that correct opinion. So Alpine were a disappointment, but for many reasons, as well as off track, to be honest. Also, Aston Martin, bit of a disappointment considering where they are, but again, they're focusing on the next set of regulations. The fact that Lance Stroll is still out there racing, losing to a 44-year-old driver is phenomenal, in my opinion, and losing comfortably to him. I just don't understand why he's still out there. I mean, I know why he's out there, but I don't understand why he is. because he doesn't need to be doing what he's doing. He doesn't seem at all interested in racing, doesn't seem at all interested in the sport. Every time you see him in an interview, he looks grumpy. He's very surly. He's just completely disinterested. And you can see it in his driving. It seems like he's out there for his dad who owns the team and whatnot. Highlights, Rookie of the Year is a tough one. Kimi Antonelli probably gets the biscuits for that because he was in the better team. He got a few podiums. But you look at Isaac Hadjar, who I was a big fan of when he was coming through the junior formulas. I knew he was going to be great. He's been signed to the main Red Bull team next year. He was also awesome. I think I spoke at the start of the year how Bortoletto would probably get on top of Hulkenberg, and he did by mid-season, especially in the qualifying. He out-qualified Hulkenberg 13 to 11, I believe, in the season, and Hulkenberg's known for his qualifying. He's a very quick one-lap guy, and the fact that Bortoletto beat him in that head-to-head is really impressive. Ollie Behrman kicked the shit out of Ocon. The points don't reflect that. The end of year points was 41 to 38 in favour of Behrman. But Ocon is he's a race winner, Ocon, and a junior Formula winner. Ollie Behrman showed him up, and he'll be racing for Ferrari in a couple of years if all things work out for him. Liam Lawson, another disappointment, but also expected from me. I think I mentioned earlier on one of our other shows, I'm not a big fan of Liam Lawson. I think he's considerably overrated. Was really disappointed that Yuki Tsunoda has been dumped from the Red Bull family. When he's still staying on as reserve driver, but he's not a race driver anymore. That's a bit sad because Tsunoda is very impressive. I'm just looking through my list here. Hamilton, massively disappointing. Really not gelling with his Ferrari team. You can hear it in the radio communications. The way Hamilton conducted himself in post-race interviews or post-qualifying interviews, he was really downhearted. He seems completely unmotivated. He's not fitting into that culture at Ferrari, it feels like. I'm hoping 2026 that a new car shows a different story because Hamilton is a GOAT. He's on the Mount Rushmore of Formula One drivers for sure. It's going to be really interesting in 2026 to see how he goes against Leclerc. And looking through the list of everyone else, Carlos Sainz, it is Sainz, up against Albon. Albon is a very accomplished, very quick driver. And Carlos is probably the most underrated driver in the field. It took him quite a while to get used to this Williams car, but once he did, he started kicking Albon's ass. Like he got the 2 podiums for Williams this year. Albon kind of fell off where Carlos was just picking up the pace and just beating him over and over. And I think it's only a good thing for Carlos to be in that team at the moment because he could probably write his own ticket if 2026 goes right for him, and he might be able to position himself into a race-winning team again. Fingers crossed for him because I'm a big fan of Carlos and always have been. I mean, he was the only one that's ever really matched Verstappen, apart from him and Ricciardo. But when they were juniors together, first-year drivers at Toro Rosso, Sainz and Verstappen were quite evenly matched. So, yeah, that's highlights from teams. That's the driver highlights and lowlights. Highlights from teams. I mentioned Alpine, terrible. McLaren just dominated the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes plugged along and filled in a gap. They finished second, but they seemed to outperform their actual car. Yeah, they did better than expected. Red Bull, again, pretty much only a one-driver team, and that's all Max. Ferrari, extremely disappointing. They seem to give up and probably focus on 2026 as well very early on in the year. So that might explain some of their falling off the radar as well. But otherwise, everything else kind of turned out the way I would have expected. I mean, Racing Bulls, Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, all those, that same team, they did quite well. They with thanks to Isaac mainly. Lawson did get a few points, but they did pretty well in the constructors, and they finished, I think, the highest they have done in quite a while. I think they were 6th, 7th, maybe 6th actually. Yeah, they were 6th. They beat Aston Martin. They beat teams with a much bigger budget, much better drivers. Honestly, much more experienced and seasoned drivers than what they have. So yeah, Toro Rosso did a really great job.
One last question for you about this season, and then we'll kind of put a bow on the 2025 season and start to look forward to 2026. I asked you a little bit about, the impact that like Drive to Survive has had on F1 ever since Netflix started, broadcasting that. Do you see a similar bump now that this Brad Pitt movie has been released? Do you see more eyeballs generally on F1 now, but or it's
I
about the
don't know
same.
if I see. I don't know if I see the stats for that, but I have seen the discourse from people who have watched the movie because obviously, I mean, my life revolves around movies and Formula One, so I see. So this was the best of both worlds
This
for me.
this is
So
the
I,
the crossroad right there.
yeah, yeah. So seeing people comment on it on socials and in the forums that I'm in that really like the movie and I love that they loved it. It says a lot about they. I think they did the perfect job for that movie, as in what they created for people who don't necessarily follow the sport, like
Mhm.
me, as hardcore as I do. If people want to see my reviews on Letterboxd, I've seen it twice. You can see my reviews at Curb Rider on Letterboxd, and as a Formula One fan, you hopefully would understand my point of view of it. I loved what it did to showcase the sport, but it also despised a lot of things that they did that just basically made a mockery of the sport as well. Because especially with the rules and the way races turned out, I mean, it's Hollywood drama, so I'm gonna have that issue. So,
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
but from a spectacle, I was watching a movie in the cinema this year. I did get to see this in the cinema as well. It's impressive. Like it's a really beautifully shot film. It really shows what the sport is capable of and what these drivers actually go through, the speed of it, the closeness, the beauty of it, the technical aspects of it,
The risk,
I don't know,
everything.
just everything. Like they really touched a lot of great bases. They just kind of ruined it a little bit with some of the characters, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, let's put a bow on the 2025 season and let's
Let's do
look
that.
look ahead to 2026. So you mentioned some rules changes when it comes
Hmm.
to engine makeup. So kind of walk us through what's going to be happening next year with 2026 and some of the changes that are
Yeah.
coming about.
Well, completely different formula. So the cars are smaller. They're going to be 10 centimeters narrower, about half a meter shorter. They're going to have slightly smaller tires. They're going to weigh 30 kilos less. They're going to rely 50% on internal combustion engine energy and 50% battery, as in kinetic energy. They got rid of the MG, which was the heat sink battery, because it's complicated, expensive, and heavy. It wasn't doing anything for the team, so it's all to kinetic energy. They're using purely synthetic fuels for the first time, no actual carbon fuels,
Hmm.
nothing coming from the earth. As far as I'm aware, I don't know what these synthetic fuels are made of, whether it's better for the environment or not, to be perfectly honest, but that's more sustainable, what they're doing. And yeah, there's a look. DRS is being removed, so they're actually moving to the front and the rear wing will both go into what they're calling now, it's going to be called an overtake mode and a corner mode. So basically, on any straight, the drivers will be able to reduce the drag on their front and rear wing so they go faster. They do foresee some issues with the engines becoming, especially at the end of a very long straight, that these engines will actually be slowing down or the drivers will have to slow down to create battery energy for the
Mhm.
rest of the lap. So it's going to be a really interesting first half of 2026. Yeah, it's a completely new formula altogether. So it's going to be mega interesting to see who comes out on top. At the moment, there's rumors, I guess they're pretty well founded rumors, that Mercedes and Red Bull slash Ford have come up with a loophole in the engine regs where at ambient temperature, there had to be a ratio within the piston of a 16:1 with the fuel burn. I don't fully understand it. But at heat, when they're heated up, apparently Mercedes and Ford have found a loophole where they can create an 18:1 compression ratio, which obviously gives them an extra 15 or 20 horsepower, which can mean 3/10 a lap. So now there's debate going on whether or not the FIA close that loophole, which is going to ruin those two teams, or they allow it to go ahead, and the other teams without those engines are going to be ruined, and they have to play catch up and recreate the software or something within their engines to do the same thing. Basically, none of that's become out as official, but it's come from very good sources that that's what's happening.
So which way do you think it's going to go? Do you think they're going to close the loophole, or do you think they're just going to be like, let them race and then let
I
everyone just
th
figure it out?
Precedent says that they'll just say let them race. I mean, the rules are there. They might close off the loophole for 2027, for example, and for 2026, they say Sorry, guys, we missed it. If you missed it, so did we. 2009 was a really big example of that when they created this new set of aerodynamic rules. And Braun, who I don't know if you've heard about Braun, but there's a documentary on Disney Plus / Hulu that Keanu Reeves talks about with the Braun basically came in for one season. They were purchased from Honda. Honda pulled out of the sport during the global financial crisis. The team principal brought the team, named it after himself, and they had created what they called a double diffuser, which basically means at the back and underneath the car, there was basically an extra wing that gave them extra downforce on the back of the car, which is a massive, massive advantage. And that team, first and only year in the championship, won the drivers and the constructors. Did they win the constructors? Doesn't matter. They won the drivers' championship because of that. And other teams had to catch up, but they were complaining, well, blah, blah, blah. We didn't do this. That's not, it was a loophole that they exploited. They got away with it. A few other teams had to catch up, and they did, certainly by mid-season. So that was the precedent with the FIA. It's just they've found the loophole. We have to let it go. I reckon they will do that with these engines as well. It's going to be up to other teams to catch up. They might allow some type of dispensation where they allow those other teams extra dyno time, because the way they develop the engines is cost restricted as well. So they reduce the amount of hours they can spend on a dyno and this and that. But they might open that up for those teams who didn't catch the loophole, maybe in the interest of fairness. I don't know. And there's a lot. We might have answers by the time we do our preseason chat for next year. But at the moment, yeah, and in reality, these cars are actually going to be testing by the end of January. So we've got less like 3 or 4 weeks away before these cars are out on track doing some testing, which is going to be fascinating.
Wow. So other than, the everything with the cars, any other storylines that you're looking forward to, or any driver movement, or any upcoming rookies that you're looking forward to? Anything else that you're looking forward to during the off season?
Really, the off season, just to see what the testing results are. Even though testing doesn't give you a great insight to what's going to happen once they get to the track.
It's at least a baseline.
It is a baseline.
It's something to go off of.
It provides a ballpark. It provides some level of interest, especially with new regs. I'm really interested to see what the new cars look like as well, because I've only seen mock-ups of what the FIA standards are. So it's going to be interesting to see some interpretations of what they can and can't do, especially around the barge boards and the side pods. And now the cars, rather than they're really focusing on making the cars have inwash of the aerodynamics, so the air doesn't. I'll explain outwash and inwash as quick and easy as I can. So basically, what the cars have been doing for, I don't know, but for as long as I can remember, aerodynamics just try and get the air out of the car. So they push the air outside of the car. And what that does is obviously follows down the sides and the back of the car. And that's what makes it hard for the other cars behind them to follow and basically overtake, because that outwash disrupts their air, creates a lot more turbulence. Now they're changing it so body pieces and the air has to really float inwards and underneath the car, basically, to create a lot of downforce. And what that does is clean up the air for the cars following behind. So they should be able to follow closer. So I'm looking forward to that side of it. To answer one of the other questions, as far as rookies go, there's only one other rookie in the field next year, and that's Arvid Lindblad. He's moving into the Red Bull Junior team, the Racing Bulls, to partner with Liam Lawson, because Hadjar got promoted. I'm really keen to see how Hadjar does against Verstappen. I don't think he'll do well, honestly. But again, if Red Bull build a car that's not built just for Max, if it's just a standard car, Hadjar might do really well and might give himself a really good name. Really keen to see what happens with McLaren next year, obviously, because they have dominated pretty much the last 2 years. Be interesting to see if they've built something good for 2026. They should have, considering they stopped developing 2025 so early. Oh, also, should not let this pass, that there's a new team next year, Cadillac. Cadillac are joining. Are you aware of that?
No idea.
Okay.
Cool.
So Cadillac have started a team. There's a lot of politics and history around that as well, which mainly revolves around the Andretti family. But they have come to an agreement. There's like a lot of, what do you call them, hedge fund guys and investment guys that just have now developed the Cadillac brand. But Cadillac are going to be using Ferrari engines, because the whole point of getting a new team is they wanted a team to start building their own engines. And Cadillac are like, well, we're not going to be able to do that straight away. Can we give us a couple of years? So Cadillac are supposed to be running their own engine from 2028. It's probably really unlikely, to be honest. But they've got their team in there. They've got a property with Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas will be their racing drivers. Who, if you follow Formula One, you probably listen to this because you are a Formula One fan. But they are both very experienced, both multiple race winners. So they're really two really good drivers for Cadillac to pick up early on in their development. So those guys can tell them what a car shouldn't feel like, to be honest. So 11 teams on the grid next year. Really keen to see how Cadillac do. Really keen to see how Aston Martin do, especially because they have now signed Adrian Newey, who is like probably the greatest Formula One car designer of all time. Well, he is statistically, that's for sure. So Aston Martin will be really interesting. They have the Honda engine by themselves. There's a lot to look out for. There's really a lot. I'm really keen to see how Ferrari do, to be honest, because they will have the Italians screaming out for their blood if they don't get the results that they think they should be getting, and probably rightly so. I mean, Ferrari is Italy, and they certainly make it known. They put a lot of pressure on their guys in the media. I don't know if I've missed anything that you asked me there, but I seem to have just ranted for a while.
No, it's just anything else that you were looking forward to, because it seems like next year is going to be a big year for the cars, and just looking to see just anything else that you're looking forward to generally in the off season, because I know that you follow everything very closely, and what you mentioned before about testing and the results that come out from testing. I know that you're going to be looking forward to that, and my God, when this post, that'll be about like a month away. When maybe even a little bit less than that, when results for testing start to come out. But similar schedule next year as opposed to years past.
So it is similar. So it's 24 races. Australia starts it again on the 16th of March. So Australia, China, Japan, the first 3 races. And then we move back to the Middle East because Ramadan will be finished and they can race there again. But yeah, 24 races, no new circuits. Although, actually, I tell a lie, Madrid is supposed to be having a race next year. And I don't know. I'm just looking for that on the calendar because Spain is there. Because it's supposed to be a Spanish Grand Prix and a Madrid Grand Prix, but I don't know that that's going to happen because the circuit is being built from scratch around city streets of Madrid, and I don't know that it's on track to do that. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that happens as well, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. But otherwise, nothing else springs to mind other than the fact that we've got a whole new set of cars. I want to see how that all... I'm just going to look at the calendar on the official website too, actually. But yeah, just really keen to see the pecking order of these new cars. Like it's sooner rather than later, actually, would be great.
So comparing, like, I guess one thing just to kind of get a little bit of comparison, has this kind of been one of the bigger seasons for car changes? Since you mentioned the 2009 season where there was, loopholes that were, kind of being done with aerodynamics, but I'm kind of curious, is this kind of like this is going to be a bigger deal for those who are more invested in the cars themselves as opposed to just purely looking out for races, results, different things like that? Is this going to be like a bigger year compared to other years where they've made like incremental changes?
This is actually technically the biggest sporting change in the history of the sport with what they're doing with the engines, the car, with next year, we've got all new engines, all new cars, all new, just all new fuel. As I mentioned, the synthetic fuel before. That's never happened in the history of the sport before. And then we've got all these new movable aerodynamic devices as well. Never had that before. We used to have, strangely enough, in 2009 was the last time, a movable front wing that could adjust the flap up and down on the front wing as they were racing. They removed that, then DRS got introduced a few years later. And this year now both wings will be able to change. It's going to be hectic for the drivers in the cockpit, honestly. They're going to have to be pushing so many buttons. There's a lot for them to figure out. And when I said that they test in January, that is a closed test. We're never going to hear the results about that. The public tests are basically, they'll be at Bahrain in February. So two 3-day tests there on top of the private 3-day test, I think, or 6-day test actually, maybe for the teams. Yeah, so I lost my train of thought, sorry, but I think that's going to be really, really fascinating.
All of this to say that next year's Formula One season is shaping up to be really filled with a lot of new things to look forward to. New team,
Yes.
maybe a new track, but between the new team and new everything when it comes to the cars, it's probably shaping up to be, one of the more exciting ones, especially for a fan who's been following Formula One as long as you have.
Yeah, look. I always love new regs, but the problem with new regs comes a completely unstructured pecking order, completely unpredictable. That's what's exciting about it. Could be Williams could come out and just be the dominant team because they've got the Mercedes engine. They could build the best car. We just don't know. They probably don't have the infrastructure for it. But what normally happens though, there's going to be one or two teams that just dominate. That's what normally happens. But in saying that, the fact that Mercedes have supplying 5 teams with engines, including themselves, it could be 5 teams just fighting for it, and the rest it can sometimes become like a different formula. There could be seconds between fastest lap times. Like when you get the qualifying, for example, this year, but first and 10th could have been separated by half a second between first and 10th. When I was following the sport in the 90s, a driver who finished on pole could be a full second ahead of the person who's third on the grid, for example. A second on the grid now means first or 18th. Could mean first and last. But next year, I think it's going to go back to those bigger gaps in qualifying and lap pace completely because someone will get it right. And then as things develop over the life of this formula, there's a law of diminishing returns. Other teams will catch up quicker than the other teams will be able to develop because there's a finiteness to the peak of these cars at certain points. So yeah, it's going to be a very fascinating game, that's for sure.
Well, cool. I'll be looking forward to hearing from you about anything that has happened in the off season, and then as we do our annual season preview coming up February, into early March, we'll figure that out sometime soon. But Adam, I always appreciate talking to you about Formula One. Always appreciate talking to you, period. But is there anything that you'd like to plug, and where can the people find you if they want to ask you about movies or Formula One?
If you want to talk to me about movies, I'm always available. I have an Instagram page, curbside_collections, which is also a podcast I host. It's purely about physical media. Also host a horror podcast. All of my podcasts, by the way, are on this network, SPDM Crew. I have a super fun, happy horror hour with my mate Mike from Beyond Horror. We just recently interviewed an Australian director about his film called Bunny, which was actually a really great film, and hopefully more eyeballs get to see that because I think it deserves a lot of eyeballs on it. So that was a great episode. And then also do a co-host, which I'm recording tonight with Shane and Luke, the Cinematic Wasteland with our History of Cinema podcast. Always have fun with those guys. And also I mentioned before Curb Rider on Letterboxd if you want to see my F1 reviews, because they're there twice. It's basically the same review because I didn't change my opinion on it at all.
Gotta love that. Well,
yes,
Adam,
it's unusual that I haven't changed it. So yeah,
nice. Adam, always great talking to you about Formula One, and just looking forward to chatting with you more soon.
No worries. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the chat. It's always fun, Mike. Love talking about Formula One, as you can probably tell.
But that's going to do it for this episode of Sportsball. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to anything and everything SPDM Crew, wherever you get your podcast. Join us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky at SPDM Crew. Check out our website at spdmcrew.com. Shout out to iFlyer Creative Studios for making our awesome logo. Greatly appreciate their support. Check out the other shows on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. We've got a lot of great content. Really proud of the work that everyone's doing, so please check out the other shows on the SPDM Crew Network. And finally, if you've got a podcast idea or you're interested in being part of the SPDM Crew as a guest or collaborating, email us at spdmcrew@gmail.com. Until next time, pain heals, chicks dig scars, glory lasts forever.